Warning, this video takes some twists and turns, so you better buckle up. Hey, welcome back to Squarebody Stuff. I'm Chad. I think in this video we're going to be working on my 79 short bed named Squeaky, or not Squeaky, that's Cream Puff. Squeaky's the 78 step side. Anyhow, that truck needs a water pump and it's leaking transmission fluid. I'm going to double check where it's leaking. I've got a pan gasket and filter. I've got a front pump seal also. But I'm going to put transmission fluid in it anyways, just to move it into the shop so I can do the water pump. I think there's a small pinhole in the radiator also I'm going to have to address. But I think I'm just going to worry about the water pump for now. The transmission leak wasn't severe when I was driving it. It's been sitting for a few months because of the few issues it's had, and I just hadn't had time to mess with it. But anyways, I'm going to put a water pump on this thing and go through that with you guys. It's not going to be a video just it will be a how-to video, but not for every truck, because this truck doesn't have a clutch fan. It has electric fans that I put on there, so I don't have to deal with the clutch fan. When I get into it, I will try to explain what you might have to do if your vehicle has a clutch fan on it to change the water pump, which it's not rocket science. It's just, looking at it, seeing what needs to be taken off. So in this video, we're just pretty much going to be doing water pump on this thing. I may touch on what I find out on the transmission too and decide what I'm going to do later on. But I'm going to get him pulled into the shop, and of course it's rainy. It's kind of nasty outside and you can't really see it, but it's kind of a dreary day. Not real cold, which is nice. So I'm going to spend some time in the shop today. I've got plenty of stuff to do outside, but it's a good shop day. So I'll get him pulled in and figure out what I'm gonna do with this water pump. Well, I've got a new water pump already right there, already painted, ready to go. So we'll figure it out as we go. Shop dog and shop kitty have a love-hate relationship. The dog loves to pester the cat. The cat acts like it hates the dog, but it'll also chase after the dog and want to be played with, and then growl at it like it hates it. I know this really doesn't mean anything to anybody, because I could have edited this out, started my video later on in the day, and no one would have known anything. But this is just how my life goes. Plan on just staying in the shop and working on my trucks today. Well, and this is kind of the reason why I haven't been doing as many videos. I've been busy trying to actually get farm life going, or helping my neighbor and I have got, cattle running together, trying to acquire some more land to run more cattle on and stuff. So if anybody out there has cattle that's watching this, you understand that livestock comes first and you never know what's going to happen. So here I am in the middle of trying to film, a good video for you guys and try to get some work done on my truck. My neighbor Randy, which that's where my cattle are, he just now called me, said, we got a steer that busted through the fence, and steers and bulls and cows and everything's together, and we don't want that right now. We want the bull away from the cow so nothing gets bred accidentally. So I've got to drop what I'm doing, go down there and help him sort everything out. So, that's just my life, and I just want to share that with you and kind of let you guys realize that's why, I've been tied up with other stuff, and sometimes I don't have time to work in the shop anymore, but I'm trying. So wish me luck. We're going to go sort some cattle out, get everything rounded up, and I'll be back. Well, at least I get to drive a Squarebody to the rescue. Taking old buddy down here. Looks like he's about got them all rounded up in the corral, so it may not be too bad of a job. We got the boys rounded back up. Everybody's accounted for except for one cow, and she is expected to be dropping a calf anytime, so we're going to go search for her because she's nowhere to be found. cow. She's right there. Not sure if she's had her calf or what. Gotta keep an eye on her. He's bringing her side by side around. I'm gonna check on her. It's hard to tell from here. I know this ain't a water pump changing video, but this is my life. Oh, she's got a calf. I see it. All right. Well, hopefully she ain't too damn mean. Just gonna make sure that big brindle dog, he likes to play with the calves. He ain't gonna hurt them, but he likes to play with them. Oh yeah. Look at that, folks. I'm gonna stop right here, see if I can focus this camera in. Nah, I've got it on a mode that won't let me focus right now, or zoom. Yeah, it's up on its own feet. How you doing, Mama? This is what it's all about, folks. Look at that. Nice new baby calf, little bitty head on him. That bull we got is a nice bull. He's been throwing some rice calves this year. Alright, well, I'm going to cut the video off so I can try to get business done. Brutus!
Duke knows better.
Now we're going to run down and get some tags and medicine stuff and leave her alone for a minute. Go get everything rounded up. Then come back up, see if she'll let us work this calf real quick, and then leave her be. Alright, we got the calf worked, little bull. Well, soon to be steer. Got him banded. Got some vaccinations. Mama's happy. She didn't kill us. I say it's a good day. He looks a little rough right now, but he's just just taking it easy. Alright, so I'm back at the shop now. Got all the cattle ranching done. I'm going to try to get cream puffs fired up, get some transmission fluid in him, get him in the shop, and see what we got to do about the water pump. Now, like I was saying earlier, this truck does not have the clutch fan or the shroud or anything in the way, which makes this job a little bit easier. It has dual electric fans on relays and a thermostatic switch. So it's a little bit different than if you have a basically all stock truck. So where I'm going to start off with this is if you have your, getting your fan off and your shroud and everything it's kind of a pain in the butt. And I'll try to explain it how I normally do it is just use a wrench, box end wrench, or actually a ratcheting box end wrench works the best to get your bolts off or your nuts off for your fan. Pull your fan off, and most of the time your shroud and your fan has to come out all at once together. It's pretty easy to figure out. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. So once you get to that point, then you'll be about where I'm at with this setup. I'll still have to take my bolts loose here after I get my belts off, get my pulley off, and then my alternator bracket, both my alternator brackets, and then pull the pump off. But I'll set up a video or a camera to show everything I'm doing. It might be kind of a fast forward time lapse just to give you an idea of what to do. It's not a super complicated project, but I figure I'd just go ahead and show what I'm doing on this truck, and maybe it'll help somebody out. Even though we're not really dealing with the electrical system directly, we will be pulling the alternator bracket off, which is your ground to your engine. It's still a good practice when you're doing anything to disconnect your battery. That way, in case you do happen to touch a wrench off to something, you don't spark it or do anything wrong with that. So it's just a good practice to go ahead and unhook your battery. That way you don't have to worry about anything like that. Now, before I go any further, I want to show you exactly why I decided to change the water pump, why I think it's leaking. Is you can see little drips right there dripping off the bottom of the lower radiator hose, but I've traced it back. I know the light's not the best, but you can kind of see right here where there's like a wet spot, and it's coming from the weep hole underneath on the bottom side of the water pump. This weep hole right here, I believe it's draining down, running down, and coming off the lower radiator hose. Now when it comes to draining the coolant, if I'm just doing a water pump, I usually just take the lower radiator hose loose from the water pump itself and let it drain out into a bigger pan, whatever size pan you've got. The bigger the better to catch everything. That way, that's going to be your lowest point. There's no sense in taking any, your radiator hose, upper radiator hose loose, or your drain cock at the bottom of the radiator if you have one. There's no sense in doing that. I just usually take it loose at the hose at the water pump itself, and that's all you really need to do. So that's what I'm going to do next. Get the coolant drained out. It may not have much coolant in it, because the last time I had any issues with it, I didn't add any coolant to it, so it may not have a whole lot in it. Yours may be full, but I'm just going to let that clamp loose, pull that hose off, get my belts off, get everything ready to go, and then I'll get to the water pump itself. Now once you get your clamp off of your hose, that hose may be stuck on the water pump pretty hard, so you can use a screwdriver or whatever it takes. Just try not to damage your hose a whole lot. If you got an older hose, it may damage it. This is a fairly new hose, so I'm not too awful worried about it, but still just try to be a little careful to get it broke loose. They make actual tools to get hoses broke loose, but I don't have one. I just use a screwdriver. Alright, as you see, I've got my power steering pump out of the way, alternator out of the way, all the brackets out of the way, all the belts off. The next step really would be just your 4 bolts to hold your water pump on. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and break my plug loose, because my heater hose on this particular truck comes off of the intake instead of the water pump. So I'm going to need this plug for the new water pump, so it'll just make it a lot easier to break it loose while it's bolted to the engine. So I'm going to do that right now. And as you can see, hopefully you can see this on the camera, you can see where it's been leaking from that poured on the bottom for quite some time now, so that's where my coolant was leaking. It's just that seal inside has gone bad. Now I have seen people put grease zerks or grease fittings in these holes, the weep holes, and pump it full of grease and not worry about it. I've never personally done that. I thought about trying it just to see if it works, but if your seals are compromised, you can't really get by without it. So this is a GM stamping, so this may be an original 1979 water pump. So it served a good life. It probably is rebuildable, but for right now, I got to get my studs off, which I probably should have pulled my studs off before I pulled it off the engine. It would have been a little easier. I'm going to get my studs off and then get the mating surfaces cleaned up and get ready to put the new pump on. Now, if your water pump's never been off, these studs may be stuck in there pretty good. They're not really that expensive if you just want to go buy new ones. These haven't been in there very long. I just put them in maybe a couple years ago. So I should be able to break them loose like so. And you don't want to put your pliers on the threads. And it's a good idea when you're putting them back together to go ahead and put some anti-seize on there so they don't get stuck. Or maybe Loctite if you want them to stay in there. It's up to you, I guess. I'd rather be able to pull them back apart eventually. I don't think I anti-seized these last time. Not following my own directions, but I'll get these out, get them put on the new pump, and then start getting ready to put the new pump in. When it comes to cleaning up the gasket surfaces, you can use a scraper, sandpaper, whatever you need to use. I've got this little roll-lock disc or finger disc that it's well used, but it's still got a lot of life left in it. I'll use it, clean this off, get the paint off this where I got bare metal, and do the same thing on the engine. Clean that off real good. Make sure it's good and clean. Clean it off with a little carburetor cleaner or brake parts cleaner or something, acetone, something to make sure you got all the grease and oil off of it. And then before I put my gaskets on, I'll use a little bit of RTV on both sides. What I normally do is just put a little bit on the water pump itself. I mean, just a real thin layer, just enough to make up for any imperfections. You don't want a big gob of it squeezing out. And then put my gaskets on, then put just a little real thin layer on the gaskets themselves. You could either do it on the pump itself or put them on the block. It really doesn't matter which way. That's just the way I do it. As you can tell on this old pump, they're stuck to the water pump pretty good. Don't remember which way exactly I done it, but just a little bit of RTV on there will help seal them up real good. And if for some reason you don't want to put gaskets on there, I have several times put water pumps on without any gaskets at all. Just a decent thin layer of RTV on the pump or on the block before you made it up. You want to put a little bit extra on there than what you will with just the gaskets because you want to make sure it's good and sealed. But obviously the gasket, have that gasket material in there would be the best way to seal it. But I have done it without gaskets and I've never had one leak. But it is best to put gaskets on there. So I'm going to clean these off. A little bit RTV, a little bit of gasket, and a little bit more RTV, and then stick it on the block. And of course, you might be asking, what's RTV? It's room temperature vulcanizing gasket maker. I've got some red, which is high temp. This is the only tube I had that was any good. I usually like to use the ultra gray by Permatex. It works out really good. It's high temperature, but for a water pump, and most things, about any RTV will work, either the blue, black, gray, red, whatever color. For a water pump will work just fine. So I've got a thin layer on there. I'll stick my gaskets on. Kind of stick it down. Then I'll put another thin layer on the gaskets. I've already got my block cleaned up. And before I go to bolt this on, I want to make sure that I've got my threads cleaned up on my block. If you had one that's a little bit stuck, maybe a little bit corroded, it's a good idea to run a thread, a tap through your bolt holes. If you don't have a tap, it's probably not that big of a deal, but you know, sometimes going that extra mile to do the job right is well worth it in the long run. Most times I don't do it. I just want to suggest it just in case you had a bolt that was a little bit tight coming out or something. This water pump really hasn't been on there for very long. I mean, it's an old one, but I put this engine together, I think a year ago or 2 years ago maybe, so I know it hadn't been on there very long, so I'm probably not going to chase the holes, but it'd be a good idea to do that. Another good suggestion is go ahead and clean your bolts off. Make sure you don't have any bunch of rust or anything on these bolts. If you make sure your threads are good. If they're bad, if they're really corroded, you need to replace them. There is one bolt hole in the block, I'll show you here in just a second, that is a through hole. And what I mean by that is it actually goes into the water jacket. So you'll need to, at least on that one bolt, put some sort of thread sealant on there, whether it's Teflon tape or Teflon paste, or what I normally do is just use my RTV, put a little dab on that on the threads. And I normally just, if I'm going to do one, I'm just going to do all of them, and that gets a little bit of protection on your threads so they don't get, it's kind of like anti-seize in a way. Not saying it's right or wrong, but that's just what I normally do. And like I said, these have been on there for a year or two, and they look good. On the shoulders of the bolt, this is the shoulder. You can put a little anti-seize on there, keep it from corroding into the actual body of the water pump. So if you ever have to take it back off, or the next guy, do him a favor. That way these bolts don't, because I make sure they don't seize into the water pump body themselves, because I've actually seen these break the head off because the bolt shoulder is actually corroded and seized into the pump body itself. Not necessarily the threads are seized into the block, but the shoulder is actually seized up. So a little bit of something on there will help out too. But I'm going to get that on there. My gaskets are on there. My block's cleaned up. I'm about ready to put this back on as soon as I get my bolts prepped. I'm going to show you real quick what I mean about the one bolt hole that's a through hole, because it goes all the way into the water jacket. I know you can't really see it through the port because of lighting, but it goes all the way through. So you'll have, if you don't put any sealant on this bolt, you could potentially have a coolant leak just around that bolt head. This bolt hole, the rest of them I'm pretty sure are blind, which means they don't go all the way into the water jacket. All the small block Chevys, and I'm pretty sure the big block Chevys are the same way, but you need to double check just to make sure on your particular block that, there may be some castings out there that are different. So this is not 100% true fact on all of them, but on most of them that I've dealt with, it's just a lower driver's side one that has a through hole that you really need to put some sealant on. Alright, from this point forward, it's pretty much installation is reverse of removal. So I got my bolts prepped, got a little thread sealant on each one of them just because, and got a little anti-seize on the shoulders just so I don't have to worry about them getting seized up in the pump body. Make sure you don't push your gasket off. My sealant didn't cure all the way, kind of rushing things. Get a bolt started. Start another one. Take your time, make sure you don't push a gasket out or something. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up off camera. There's, like I said, pretty much everything from this point forward is the same as just opposite of removing everything. If you're worried about torque specs on your bolts for your water pump, they're, torque spec on a 3/8/16 bolt is roughly around 22 to 32, I think was what my book said. So, you know, good and tight is about all you need to really worry about on them. They're not real picky. You know, your fan bolts, probably around 15 to 20 foot-pounds of torque on them, or just get them good and tight, because you really can't get a torque wrench on the bolts for the or the nuts for the fan if you're running the fan. Anything else is make sure you top off your coolant level right. You may have to run it a little bit, let it cool off, top it back off. Other than that, I think that's pretty much all I need to cover on removal and installation of a water pump on a small block Chevy. Now, the big block Chevys are pretty much the same thing. Not much of a difference. Before I end this off, I want to say thank you for watching. If you have any questions, give me a comment down below. Ask me a question down there. If you have any comments, just give me a comment down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little notification bell. That will give you notifications whenever I put up new videos. I've also got a Patreon page, channel, whatever that is. I don't know much about that. I'm trying to figure that out. You can go check that out. You can donate, and I'm trying to set up different levels for you guys that are watching. Also, before I end this off, I want to ask a question to my subscribers and whoever's watching this. I've got a lot of other things going on in my life, as far as, you know, taking care of the cattle, or taking care of the land, or just taking care of the house, or just, I've got other vehicles that aren't square bodies. So far, when I put them on the channel, that doesn't go over very well, because this is a square body stuff channel. It's about square bodies. So instead of bringing that stuff onto this channel and trying to keep this channel on the square body side of things, I just want to ask your opinion. Please leave a comment below on what you think about me starting another channel, just kind of other stuff, whether it's cooking on my Blackstone griddle, or I don't know, just general life stuff, everything that goes on. I like to document stuff. I like to teach people how to do things. And it's my way. May not be the right way, but it's how I do it, and I get by pretty good on how I do stuff. I make mistakes like everybody does, but I learn from them, and I just want to pass that on to you. So let me know what you think about that idea of me starting another channel of just regular every other day stuff, or about my other vehicles, general maintenance on other vehicles, or tractors, or four-wheelers, chainsaws, whatever it is. Let me know what you think about that. I think I'm going to end it off here. We'll talk to you later, and keep your square bodies rolling.